versions of it, and you do workshops, and you've got one upcoming, which is what got us to bring you on finally. Was that we want people to take the workshop because and I think I'm going to take it. That's because mine is 2009, so I think I need the new version. And being able to do this kind of advanced basic IDing of coral, I think is seems like a really useful way into taxonomy, not even just into science, but it's useful for aquarists who keep corals to be able to have this if they don't have it memorized, and be able to kind of get an idea of what it is they're actually looking at. Plus, that's what
I was trying to say earlier. I just want to say this real quick in that. So before the show happened today, Russell, Richard was like, hey, I want you to take like an hour and go look at this guy's stuff and familiarize yourself with it, because we're going to talk to him. So I was like, okay, well, I was blown away. I watched all your videos, and it's funny, we get accused of our beginning music sort of sounds like cheap porno music, but I loved your little video clips because it had the same feel to it. And that's just my comfort level is porn music. But
no, I take all these as compliments. You were moved.
It turns out a lot of no rights needed music sounds like porno music.
Yes. That's why they use it probably.
Yeah.
But I was taken by that. I sort of thought going in that I was like, okay, this is going to be like a science mumbo jumbo, like not all that accessible on a hobbyist level, but that's not what I found at all. As a matter of fact, I was blown away by your way. And it's funny, I did want to hear it from your mouth, how you had it categorized, but I also think it's important that you hear from someone that just walked up into it today. I just think it's so crazy because I watched a short video of like a Christmas tree worm, and literally, and I own Charlie Veron's 3-book compendium. But the way I would ever use it is just sitting down, flipping through it. Oh, cool. What's that? Oh, cool. What's that? But if I had to classify something, I would be, there's no way. But your method was like, hey, does it have a tentacle? Then it leads you to things with tentacles. Hey, does it have a spiral shape in the case of the Christmas tree worm? And the way that you came up with to lead you to the correct thing is just, it's almost like an Apple iPhone thing, like someone that's brain dead could pick up an iPhone and just start using it.
Yeah, well, it's a for me, I am a communicator at heart, and I love, the poetry for me is in plain language explanation of things that create a learning pathway that the interested person can pursue. And the Coral Finder, for example, and you were mentioning the Reef Finder there, the one that has like a tentacle index, and it has a holes index. You can search by holes, on of all the reef creatures. You can even search by sediment. These are just simple handles that, you've got this great big visual supercomputer sitting on top of the head, and we continually put up barriers to it by interspersing text. And it's the worst kind of text. It's jargon text. It's technical text. And that text is a barrier, and the whole sort of scientific world, and we're heading off into beef territory here, I think, is that
beef away, my friend.
Do your beef.
Well, it's not the job of scientists, although we would like it to be, for them to create plain language explanations of everything. Like that.
I love this conversation.
But like, how do you get your next job as a scientist? Because you probably don't have a real job. You're probably on a 3-year contract or a 2-year contract, right? How do you get the next job? Oh, I've got 10 new publications from my last job. And that's how you apply for that. You don't get any kudos at all for creating a beautiful plain language video or an explanation of something. It's not how you get your job. But communication and plain language communication, and creating a learning pathway that has no barriers in it. And by barriers, I mean not just great big ugly technical terms, but assumed knowledge. So, you know, when we did our very first ever Coral Finder training workshop, we went out to Fiji to test it. And I got a little grant to, you know, that paid us to bring a whole bunch of people in from different parts of Fiji who would be interested in resource management. And they came to our Coral Finder workshop, and we were very pleased with ourselves. We've just, you know, created this fantastic new tool, and we tested it on students here where I live, and we kind of knew it worked. Anyway, the first thing I did that was like really stupid was we wanted to have a before and after test. And I said, here's a slideshow on a computer, just click through the slideshow, write down the names of any corals you recognize, that's your before. And then at the end of the workshop, we'll do it again, and we'll give you another series of pictures, and that's going to be your after. We'll show you how much you've improved. Now, there's a whole bunch of people who, firstly, had never used a computer, didn't know how to use a mouse, right? Just like that was an assumption, you know, as assumed knowledge. And they don't grow up watching David Attenborough or National Geographic documentaries, right? So they, you know, like at the end of this workshop, the guy who got the best results was a 60-year-old guy who'd worked on a coral farm, a clam farm all his life. And he came up to me at the end of the workshop and he said, and he got 0 for prior knowledge and 15 out of 15 for end of workshop. And he came up and he said, Russell, I want to thank you for showing me that corals are not rocks. And you just cannot know what is assumed knowledge for the interested person. And so removing barriers, making sure that everything is reduced to the simplest equation, so that people don't go, I tried and it didn't work. And I think if you look at that Coral Finder, it's just the inside page, you know, like the whole of coral taxonomy is reduced that diagram with 10 terms. And those 10 terms are, one of them is mouth.
Yeah.
So I've reduced, you know, 1,000 horrible technical terms to mouth, gut, tentacles, septa, costae, and septocostae. That's it. Yeah, like if you can wrap your head around these concepts, then all of the other stuff just doesn't matter. You follow the visual system, you engage the visual supercomputer, which can do all sorts of incredible discernment. But the thing that gets in the road, the thing that is the enemy of the Coral Finder is text.
Yeah. You know, I think thinking about science communication and science in general, I've always felt like it's a bad idea to force scientists to be science communicators. You know, it's like a sales associate becoming manager. It's like you weren't trained to do that job. You weren't interested in doing that job. You didn't learn how to do that job. You don't want to do that job. You just kind of have to now, and you're not good at it. So, you know, scientists should be doing their science. And then I think people like you and people like me, I think I'm a better science communicator than I am a scientist, because I get bored after a few months of a project. I want, you know, I want it to keep going. But insisting that scientists be able to discuss their work in terms of mouth instead of buccal mass, I think is a mistake. I think it dumbs it dumbs. I'm using dumb down, not derogatorily. It makes scientists stop thinking about their science in the way they need to, and makes
the way to capture the essence of what you're saying is like, we don't dumb down, we simplify up. And and at some point, you're going to have to learn what buccal mass means, or, you know, any one of 1,000 horrible Latin names that are associated with coral ID, but you don't need them when you're starting. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why
if this simplifying up and creating a learning pathway that doesn't have crevasses that you can fall into is the answer.
Yeah. Let people who are interested in doing the education do the education, and make the bridge to the scientists. Let them do their work.
I'm a consummate layman, okay? I'm just a guy that cleans aquariums, but I grew up with, my mom was always watching Nova, and I grew up with Jacques Cousteau. I grew up watching Carl Sagan, you know, when that stuff was new, all that. And I have to say, as a layman, as someone that listens to people like you, Russell, and wants to know these things and hear the stories, but I'm not trying to get a PhD dissertation. You know, sometimes there's something bad when, you know, we say dumbing down, but at the same time, like if I'm listening to someone talk about theoretical physics and not academic wise, for just entertainment wise, I want to try, my brain wants to assimilate some of this knowledge, and that's why I think that, like what Richard's saying, you can't get a scientist to go study this and say, then be an eloquent communicator of that as well. Like a very rare person like Carl Sagan was, but I'm telling you as a layman that science communication is shit. It's almost as important as the science itself, because now I'm taking a broader view of this. Take COVID, because this not being able to very eloquently communicate things to laymen has created this rift between scientists and the common person, and that breeds distrust. Now that could be willful ignorance, but I'm telling you, as someone that has always got a kick out of fun stuff that my brain just sort of grapples with, but I love the communication of it, but you know, it doesn't have to come from the person doing the science.
No. And you know, we all owe an incredible debt to the Cousteaus and the billions and billions of stars and galaxies. You know, I mean, like that is just seared into my memory. And every time I look at the night sky, billions and billions of stars.
We're made of stars.
Starship Earth.
And yeah, like the people who paint those vistas and let you into them and don't treat you like a fool, but welcome you into that space. They spawn the generations that follow of science, you know, of people who want to be scientists, or people who want to be communicators, or the people who want to love nature and make good decisions and are, you know, constructive citizens, you know, because they take nature into account. And I think that sort of communication and understanding of the natural world is just so important to bringing us all along to a better future. And I just have enormous respect for all of those people who fill those roles.
Bringing us all along to a better future. And that's my point, in that science of all types trudges this way and does its science thing. And just the common person on the planet, which, you know, science is trying to create a better place for us all, you know, but people like, I don't understand that scientist is evil and they're telling us this, they want us to get shots for COVID. I mean, that rift, if that's not being communicated, what they're doing back to the common person, is the problem.
This is another thing I think that bothers me about our idea, or the zeitgeist idea, that scientists should all be science communicators, is that it skips the reason why we want them to be science communicators, because we don't do a good job of early science education. So, you know, that's a hard thing to fix, because that's a big problem. But it's very easy to go, oh, you're a scientist, you should be able to educate anybody on what you're saying. And it's like, but it's not. If they don't have the basic framework to have the discussion, we have to go back a step and back a step and back a step, and
that's not your job.
It's not their job, you know. But someone like me, you put me about cephalopods, you put me on, you know, Ceph Week for Science Friday. No, I can make that digestible. But, you know, but if I'm doing science on them, I'm not talking about its mouth or calling it the kissing octopus, or, you know, I'm using some actual terminology, because that allows us to move faster down the road. Everything can't do everything for everybody all the time. There's a reason we have specializations. So while I like the idea that scientists are trying to be better communicators, which is always a good thing. I don't want us as a society to miss the point that it's the education that's the problem. We can't just fix it at the end by insisting that everyone be Bill Nye the Science Guy. You know, how are you going to explain CRISPR technology? You know, you have to smarten it up. Is that what you said before? Or
simplify it up.
Simplify it up.
Yeah.
Very quickly, there's no more simplifying it up for a lot of things, you know?
Yeah, not without building foundations, in which case you might as well go and do a degree or something like that.
I mean, imagine.
And the very best are like that. You know, Feynman was an incredible teacher, right? You just listen to his lectures and they're all simplified up. And then he goes where he wants to go with it. But to expect every scientist to be a brilliant science communicator, just I think we need to stop that. But
well, at some point, in your professional life, it probably helps to at least do some training in the language of storytelling and
absolutely
and the speaking in plain ways. So I would still harangue institutions to try and get people to just like basic, it's like you just call it basic English editing, like why are you using these words when
for sure
the sentence would be shorter and more understandable.
I'll say it this way. Somebody who is working on stopping or reversing climate change, I would much rather have them working on that than figuring out how to explain it better. Before we go on to specific beefs, if you have them, these are available, or not this one, because you don't want this one. Although this one does have the coolest thing ever, the slate.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if the new one's
but this is the current one, Coral Finder 2022. It's up to date with the molecular taxonomy as of the middle of the year or March this year, and it's improved in various ways. But if you are interested in reading the literature, what you'll find is all of the papers that that describe the scientific name changes are there, and they're referenced in the body text, so you can sort of go, oh yeah, well, if that's something you want to chase up. But what we're doing at the moment is a series of Zoom-based workshops, just because we understand that it's just not convenient for people to travel, and I can understand also a lot of people don't want to travel. Their lives are busy enough, but they don't need to endure delayed travel to Australia or somewhere, or even me sort of coming to the US at the moment seems a bit daunting still, until COVID settles down a bit more. So we're doing the training as a series of workshops, 4 by 4 hour sessions, and I've spent a lot of time adapting my I call it meat space workshop, the one that in the physical world I've adapted the training resources, and we ran a couple about a year ago, and I was terrified. I thought, oh, this is going to be a terrible experience. You won't be able to hold specimens, you won't be able to sort of look me in the eye and say, ask the questions you really want to ask. But the truth of the matter was, a lot of people were watching it on the big screen. Some people even put it up on their TV, invited their friends around, and they said that the images, which I strive to get really high quality images in my tutorials and presentations and stuff. They said these images look better on, and I can get closer to them on the big screen than I can if I was actually physically in the room with you and you were projecting them, in a room and there was windows open. Like it looks a lot nicer on my big screen. So we've actually gone from dreading the idea of Zoom-based Coral ID workshops to actually embracing them. And so this new series is going to have new, further and better resources and materials. Everyone gets a copy of the Coral Finder. You get a a workshop manual, which actually has all of the technical stuff explained to you with pictures and what the Coral Finder does is it takes you, down the road to species ID, and this workshop gives you the skills to identify corals to genus no matter what growth form, and it takes you up to the cusp of what you need to know to identify species. And at that point, I stop and say, all of these corals are great, and their species are good, and they're well known, and it's worth your time to pursue them. And here are the extra names you might need to know to do that beyond the Coral Finder. But there's some areas which are being reviewed and some areas that are in flux. And to be honest, it's just not going to be worth your while until the science is done, And so I try and paint a kind of, for want of a better word, a mature picture of where to spend your energy, and just give people an appreciation of where things are going and how much change is still coming down the pipe.
Right on. And when are the workshops going to be, in January or February, or when are you planning? And we'll put the links to the Coral Finder, and we'll put the links to the workshop, but we just want a general idea of when the workshops are going to be. And hopefully I'm available. I want to sign up freaking immediately. And we'll get other people too, because it's so useful.
January 17 to 20. And January 24 to 27. So that's 4 hours over each day for 4 days. And one of those workshops is better for people in the Europe or Australian time zones, and another one is better for people in the US. So that's why we're running 2 separate ones like that. So the thing to do is go to byoguides.com and just check it out.